and a very warm welcome to you. This is the My Slice of Life podcast with me, Sharon O'Neill, your very own Highland host. This week is the last episode in this season from Random to Rants, and I think you'll agree this has been a pretty random selection of topics this season, which I really hope you've enjoyed listening to. I've enjoyed doing them. I liked just having a few different things to talk about. This week is a bit of a rant, and I say a bit because I've been doing some digging to find out a bit more so I could bring you facts rather than just going off on one and ranting like I did with the supermarket episode last week. I'm still convinced they hate us, by the way. So this week my rant is, leave our food alone. And with good reason. I thought I knew what I had to avoid and I was managing pretty well. But no, the list just got bigger. And I want to talk to you about it today because as well as being angry about it, I want to share what I've been finding out so we can all push back against it together. I don't think this is just something that I'm annoyed about or that I don't want. It's getting bigger. Now, I do want to point out that I'm not an expert at this sort of thing, so I'm not aiming to do a deep dive into each area. And to be honest, each issue that I'm going to bring up could have its own episode. It's that big. I'm aiming more to bring awareness, or re-awareness if you like, because it's very easy to let things slip when we get busy. So I just wanted to highlight a few things. Because I want healthy, unadulterated food for me and my family. And I know you do too. So let's get started. We're all familiar with GMOs by now. The genetically modified foods. Not that long ago, people were up in arms at the thought of eating something which has had its very DNA changed. Not hearing too much of that at the moment, are you? I actually looked it up, and the majority of the sites that came up were pro-GMO. It was all about how they could make sure plants were more resistant to pests or could be developed to have more nutrition, not so much about people being concerned about what eating this stuff does to us. What I did find was the old line of, we don't really know, longer testing needs to be done. And I don't expect to see it labelled with GMO either. Now they call it bioengineered. Sounds just as bad to me, but that's what they're using on a lot of labels because GMO freaks people out. Apparently, some of the most common GMO crops now include soy, corn, canola, cotton, sugar beets, some papayas, potatoes, and even apples. They don't turn brown. Why on earth? Already I can feel my heart sinking. Potatoes, apples, leave them alone. One of the things I did read about was GMO plants being able to survive Roundup. Yes, that famous weed killer we all hear about. So the weeds around the plants will die, but the plant themselves don't, because obviously that's the crop they need. But they're still sprayed with it, which makes me wonder about how safe it is when we actually eat it. We wash our fruit and veg. We all do that now, but we can't be sure we've got no trace of Roundup on our food, can we? Given that some believe it's linked to things like cancer, I'm not happy about having that on my food, and I have to be very careful when I say that sentence. That's why I say some believe, because there have been lawsuits and things in the past. But we've all heard about Roundup. We've all heard what people think it can do. I don't want it on my food. Now, I don't know about you, but I really don't like the idea of my food being tampered with like this. It would make more sense to me that if they wanted to get rid of the pests, why can't they do what we're always told to do? Find out what eats those pests, but we leave the plants alone and bring those in. And as for the nutrition part of it, well, surely if the soil the plants grow in is healthy, the nutrition will be there. Again, we're told to do that as a no-dig gardener. I'm told put your compost on the ground, let the soil, deal with it itself. It's adding nutrition to your soil. But the problem is, these days, the commercial growing world, the soil isn't that healthy. It isn't healthy at all. And that should be a concern for all of us. What are they doing to the soil? For that matter, the air, the water. I could go on, and I'm sick of it. I'm trying to be calmer with this rant, but I just want to eat normal food that hasn't been messed about with. And that does bring me to another thing I can't stand. Artificial sweeteners. Things like aspartame, or E951, because they don't want to put aspartame on it. I'll come to that in a minute. It's about 200 times sweeter than sugar, and it's widely used in diet drinks. Bear that in mind for a minute. Sugar-free gum, low-calorie foods, But if you look at your labels, you'll see it on things like crisps and other foods, which have me thinking, does this need to be this sweet? I've eaten crisps, right? I love crisps, or potato chips, I think you call them in America. I love crisps. I'm a savoury, when it comes to savoury snacks, I just can't. It's my downfall. And I've eaten things before, and I've looked on the back, I'm thinking, this tastes sweet, and I've checked, and it says sweetener. They're potatoes. I don't need them sweet. It drives me crazy. And apparently, WHO, yes, who voted for you, don't start me, classified aspartame as, I quote, possibly carcinogenic to humans. It's in a group 2B, meaning limited evidence exists, but it's not conclusive. And in the 1970s, the experiments were being done with this stuff in rats. They ended up with lesions in their brains, but we've not to worry because we aren't rats and we metabolise it differently. Well, I'm not buying that one either. I also read that aspartame is partially converted into formaldehyde, a chemical that can be toxic in high doses when metabolised by the body. Do you want to be eating and drinking that? Do you want your kids to be eating and drinking that? It kills me that they put it in all these diet foods, but some studies suggest it can slow down your metabolism, which in turn causes weight gain. That's another area that needs research and has a lot of counterclaims, but it is concerning. The bottom line is you need to be really careful, don't you, because they're putting this kind of stuff in everything. It won't be long now before all we'll be able to trust eating is organic carrots. That'll be it. Carrots for breakfast, carrots for lunch, carrots for dinner, then they'll start messing about with the carrots. I just feel like all the fun is being taken out of food. And I know I ranted about the supermarkets last week, but putting that torture aside, even shopping for food isn't fun for me anymore like it used to be. I used to enjoy it, but now I'm constantly checking ingredients and having to put things back on the shelf. Seed oils is another thing we're being told to avoid now. And that's another very difficult thing to do. They're everywhere. It's also another area which is hotly debated, with some people swearing they'll kill you and others saying you can eat them in small amounts and it's fine. It's all down to how they're made by all accounts. And I read on a site called, let me get this right, health.clevelandclinic.com. And no, I don't know how reliable it is, but they asked a registered dietitian called Julia Zampano about seed oils, and she said the main problem is this, and here's just a little quote. Most seed oils go through the refining process, which includes bleaching and deodorizing, Zampano explains. This helps with the taste, colour and shelf life, but it also removes the oil's antioxidants. End quote. Add to that the fact that seed oils are widely used in ultra-processed foods, and it doesn't take long before they're connected with inflammation. And according to a site called reprovisions.com, here's a quote from them, higher omega-6 intake from industrial seed oils consistently increases the risk of many chronic Western diseases, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, and many others. End quote. So we've to avoid these now, but it's no small task. At home, if you're cooking, it's easy enough, right? You can use butter or olive oil, but take a look at anything in your pantry that's in a box, and I bet you there's some kind of seed oil in it. Personally, I find it extremely frustrating, and I'm guessing I'm not the only one. You're probably going to go after this and check what's in your cupboard, and you're going to be raging. You should be raging. I also want to briefly mention E-numbers. The E just stands for Europe, I believe, so in the US you'll have code numbers on your food too. And this is another area where when I looked it up, I found a lot of, don't panic, they're not that bad for you at all, it's all hype. In fact, on medium.com it says, quote, here are 7 facts to unravel the E mystery. There are over 300 food additives found in 50% of all supermarket foods. Many of these additives are essential nutrients and vitamins that are important for good nutrition. For instance, a few E numbers essential for the human body are E300, better known as vitamin C, E101, or rather vitamin B2, and E948, which is in fact oxygen. End quote. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? It does, however, go on to say that despite most E numbers being good for you, you might want to watch out for these. And a wee heads up, you might want to take note of these ones actually. There's E151, which is black PN, which can cause allergic reactions. E133, brilliant blue, which again can cause allergic reactions, so that's your colourants. E211, sodium benzoate, which can cause hyperactivity. E213, calcium benzoate, which can have side effects in people with allergic conditions. There's E250, sodium nitrate, can cause hyperactivity. E621, monosodium glutamate, that good old one we know about, which can cause nausea, dizziness, pain. And again the E951, the aspartame, which can cause, amongst other things, headaches. One thing I don't like is that these numbers are being used instead of telling us what is actually in our food. For example, carmine extract can be declared as E120. What is that exactly? According to embarix.com, and I quote, also known as cochineal extract, carminic acid or E120 is extracted from the dried bodies of female cochineal insects. These insects feed on certain cacti and produce carminic acid to deter predators. The extraction process involves boiling the insects to release the colourant, which is then concentrated into a powder or liquid for use. End quote. In case you're wondering what sorts of foods would have that, look in your cupboards and your freezer and check the labels of strawberry yogurts, cherry toppings, tomato sauces, candies, lollipops, those lovely red sprinkles for your ice cream. Oh, check your ice cream too, and any red sorbets, sausages, hot dogs, deli meats, condiments, alcoholic drinks, pharmaceuticals, your makeup, the list goes on and on. E120, the dried bug colourant of choice. Of course, it can also be labelled as a natural colourant, and technically they wouldn't be lying. No, thank you. And that brings me to the latest thing I've been hearing about. And here in the UK, and in Europe at least, we now need to be on the lookout for bug flour. I'm talking dried mealworms and dried and crushed crickets. Yes, they're doing it now, and they're putting it in our flour, which is then getting used to make bread, cakes or pasta. And I really wish I was joking, but it actually gets worse. And if you think I am joking, head to Amazon right now and type in cricket crackers. There's a whole section, and I'm just looking at the made in the UK bit. They want us to eat bugs. I don't want to eat bugs. A huge part of the argument is to do with the environment. Crickets don't fart as much as cows. They're better for the planet. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to come out and say it, and I know a lot of podcasters don't, but I will. I'm not buying any of this crap. It's like the whole Bovaer thing and the milk. If you don't know about that, that's another thing we have to be careful for, is where we get our milk from. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me fill you in just briefly. What they are trialling on some dairy farms is an additive that they put into the dairy cow's feed to reduce their methane emissions. In other words, to stop the cows farting. You couldn't make this up. Now, when the farmers add this stuff, they apparently have to be very careful and wear full PPE, the personal protective equipment, and they say the milk is fine for us to drink, but no long-term studies have been done yet. In fact, there's been such an uproar about this online, many companies are now coming out and stating their milk is made with no additives on the label. I don't know about anywhere else, but here in the UK there are several channels on YouTube which are doing a lot of work to help us determine which companies we can safely buy our milk from, and I'll put links to them in the notes. And just to add to that as well, if you live somewhere where you can buy raw milk, congratulations. You might not be aware, but in Scotland, we are not allowed to buy raw milk. And I would like to change that. So I've started a petition on change.org. I will put a link to that as well in the notes, and I would love it if you go along. Just click the link and sign it for me. I don't see why England and Wales, they can have raw milk. They can buy raw milk. But Scotland, no, we're not allowed. We're not even given the chance to choose whether or not we want raw milk. So that's another thing that I'm annoyed about it, and I feel quite passionate about it. At least give people the choice. And I know there are some people who are really against it. Well, that's fine. You don't have to buy it. But I would like the choice. I would like to be able to buy it. So please head along, use the link, sign the petition. Let's bring raw milk back to Scotland. So that was just to fill you in on what's happening with the milk. But back to the whole bugs thing, these mealworms and cricket flowers and all that stuff, the bottom line is they don't want us eating meat. And if you're vegetarian, I get it. I mean, the welfare of the animals I eat, it does concern me. It is a concern. And I was even vegetarian for a while. And I know there are many benefits for us when it comes to eating meat, the protein, good fats and so on, just to name a couple. So that's a choice thing, I get it. But do you really want to eat bugs? Do you want bugs in your flour? I used to hear the human body can't cope with the chitin, which is what the outer part of the insect bodies is made of. And I came across something when I was doing research for this episode, which I found interesting, because just like with the E numbers, when I looked this up, I was now getting sites which were telling me our bodies can deal with chitin. Call me cynical, but I find this a bit too convenient. And of course there is the labelling aspect to look out for. When there are bugs put in our bread, pasta and so on, it won't say things like bug bread. It will say something like UV enhanced vitamin D. Yes, it really will. They are treating the mealworms with UV light so they can say they add vitamin D. And I found a good article about it on rarefoundation.com. That's RAIR. And they explain it like this, and I just want to read this little bit out to you. So it says, Brussels, Belgium. In a controversial move, the European Union has approved Regulation EU 2025/89, allowing the use of insects as ingredients in common food products such as bread, pastries, cheese, jam and pasta. The regulation, signed into law by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, permits the use of UV-treated yellow mealworm powder in food production across the bloc. And then under a bit where it says mealworms and everyday foods, it says, the regulation allows companies to market powder derived from the larvae of the Tenebrio molitor, commonly known as the yellow mealworm. Under the new law, up to 4 grams of mealworms per 100 grams of bread and 3.5 grams per 100 grams of pastries are now legally permitted. It goes on to say, the move comes amid increasing efforts by the European Commission to phase out traditional agriculture in favour of lab-grown meat, synthetic proteins and insect-based alternatives. The EU's novel foods team leader Rafael Perez Berbajal has stated that insects could play a key role in diversifying the European diet and reducing dependence on conventional livestock farming. You can see where this is heading, can't you? You've probably heard about lab-grown meat by now too. Do you want to eat meat that's been grown in a lab? Meat that isn't actually meat. I was looking online about the UV mealworms and I came across the European Food Safety Authority website. The very people who are putting bugs in our food and can put the word authority in their title. And I want to read to you a bit from the abstract for the report written by 16 people I've never voted for who have said I should have bugs in my food. And it says, following a request from the European Commission, the EFSA Panel on Nutrition, Novel Foods and Food Allergens, which is now called NDA, was asked to deliver an opinion on UV-treated powder of whole yellow mealworm, in brackets Tenebrio molitor larva, as a novel food, NF. Now that's just the start, but note these are being called a novel food and that gets shortened to NF from here on. So it goes on to say, the applicant proposed to use the NF as an ingredient in various food products, such as bakery products, pasta, compotes of fruit and vegetables, and cheese. The target population is the general population. Take note here, it's going to be in everything, from your bread, your jams, any bakery item, and even in your cheese. And remember, we're talking bugs here. They start by saying we need an alternative protein because meat is bad for the planet, but then they want to put this crap in foods which have nothing to do with meat. They're not even meat substitutes. Another wee quote for you, I think you'll like this one. The submitted toxicity studies from the literature did not raise safety concerns. The panel considers that the consumption of the NF may induce primary sensitization and allergic reactions to yellow mealworm proteins and may cause allergic reactions in subjects with allergies to crustaceans and dust mites. Additionally, allergens from the feed may end up in the NF. Now normally we make quite a big deal about people who are allergic to shellfish. And as an asthmatic, I am allergic to dust mites. And now they're going to put stuff that's going to cause these reactions into our food. Does that sound appealing to you? I'll put a link to the whole article as well in the notes. But I noted a few things when I went over it, and granted I couldn't pronounce half the things they were talking about, but one line clearly stated, potential adverse health effects of chitin may be related to immunological effects. And then there's a short section called 3.10.1 Human Data, and it says, I'm going to read you exactly what it says, the applicant did not provide any human studies conducted with the NF or its source. No human studies were retrieved from the literature search. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I take it from this that they don't really know what this stuff is going to do to us. So can you see why I wanted to talk about this today? I'm just so fed up of having my food messed about with. And I'm sure you are as well. These are just some examples of things I've been coming across in the last couple of months. So from things like sweeteners, which I thought was bad, the GMO foods, which we really used to kick up about, it seems nobody does anymore. And they don't put genetically modified in the ingredients they used to. Now it just says modified. Look on your packets, it'll say modified potato starch, modified corn flour, modified. Well, how are they modifying it? Genetically modifying. They just don't want to label it like that. There's just so much going on, and I haven't even touched what's in the water, what they're doing to the air. Am I the only one? Do you want to eat bug flour? Are you happy to have all these E numbers in the food that you're eating, your family's eating? Can we do better than this? Because I think we can, but it starts with us. And I think for so long we've been just leaving them, in inverted commas, to go on with it. Yeah, you provide the food and we'll buy it. But there seems to be a real turnaround just now, especially in the UK. So I can only give it from my perspective because that's what I see. If you are seeing something similar where you are and you're not in the UK, please let me know because I'd be really interested to find out what's going on in other areas. Like I said, I will put some links to channels that I'm finding on YouTube who are putting out a lot of information about this. And there is a huge push right now in the UK to encourage people through, I think it's called, is it the Food Hub? I'll find out, put the link in for you as well. I need to make a list of all these things I've got to link. And they're trying to come up with a system where we can basically leave the supermarkets and buy direct from the farmers and the veg growers and whoever makes the produce. We go to them direct and cut out the supermarkets. It's a big, big aim. It's a huge task, but you have to start somewhere. And I think if you are sick of having the chemicals, Bovaer in your milk, E numbers, you name it, I'm sorry, but mealworms in my flour, in the jam. I'm going to make my own jam, but enough is enough. If we don't put a stop to it now, what are they going to do next? Do you think this is it? Do you think this is where they end it? Because I'll guarantee you it's not. I'll guarantee you they've got other things up their sleeves, and I want no part of it. Do you? Or would you rather have clean, nutritious, organic, healthy food? Actual food. That's what I'm hoping for. So apologies if you have found this episode a bit hard to swallow, but I just had to bring it up. I just was hearing so much about it, I just had to, because it gets to me, it bothers me, and I wanted to let you know what is going on here anyway in the UK with our food. And if you have made it this far, if you have listened to the entire episode, thank you very much. I really do appreciate your time. I appreciate you subscribing and all the support you can give me. Next week is going to be the bonus episode for the season, and I am possibly going to be trying something a little different with the next season if I can actually figure out how to do it. I did mention it before, so if you've listened to previous episodes, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you haven't been listening to enough episodes. Either way, I really hope you'll join me next week for the bonus episode. But until then, look at your food. Be very careful. And you take care of your wee self.